Well, let's speak about immigrants. In a piece you wrote for The Nation magazine entitled People Burn Here, you describe a place called the Otay Tecate Wilderness. Where is that, and what is it like?
It's a unique mountain ecology that straddles the border directly overlooking the eastern colonias of Tijuana, just southeast of San Diego. And it's been burnt twice in the firestorms in San Diego County, the one last Halloween and two Halloweens before that. The Harris Fire, which burned over Tecate Mountain a year ago, trapped a group of people crossing the border. 6 of them were died in the most horrible way, burnt to death. Others were badly burnt, took months to recover. And the press coverage in San Diego by our local paper, the Union Tribune, the only article they devoted specifically to the victims of the Harris Fire was to complain about how much what costs taxpayers had to bear for their treatment in the burn center. I mean, it took the kind of dehumanization of migrant laborers to a new level. And accordingly, last week, the Association of California Publishers gave the Union Tribune an award for its good coverage of the fire. I mean, when people can die like that, first, without any mention in the press, and then second, depicted as parasites on our medical system. I mean, we see how far political discourse has declined. It reminds you of California of the 1930s, when foreign fascism dominated the interior valleys of the state. I can't turn on my radio here in San Diego without hearing our DeFrock former mayor, Roger Hedgecock, going on and on about how immigrants are responsible for traffic, global warming. If the day's cloudy, it has something to do with immigrants. This really becomes then a perfect scapegoat, particularly when so much of the media is dominated by this level of hate, ferocious prejudice. And it's ironic in some ways that, where Californians on one hand may defeat Proposition 8 and win a big victory for the civil rights, for gay people. Mm-hmm. The issue of immigrant rights is just, dropped out of the political debate.
And of course, all the mainstream reports back in October 2007 were all about the homes threatened, right, in Malibu and San Diego County. I mean, the focus there is, the choice of focus is very obvious.
Of course, and remember that the American middle class, the upper middle class in this country, has for 3 generations enjoyed continuous growth in personal wealth, in income, in consumption, unexposed to, economic decline, disease, war. I mean, tens of millions of blue-collar Americans already been living through depression since, the Reagan presidency. But when those ranks, those strata of the upper middle class, begin to feel that their levels of income and consumption are threatened, when they see their stock portfolios, turn into ashes, the kind of ferocity of the backlash, the kind of political hysteria that could generate shouldn't be underestimated. And it poses the big danger that if the Democrats are spectacularly unsuccessful in the next year in managing the crisis, despite a huge Democratic victory next week, you might see a very dramatic return of the Republican Party, and particularly the right wing of the Republican Party in 2010.
What evidence do we see of right-wing activism along the U.S.-Mexico border near where you are?
Well, the kind of paradox is that when the Minutemen come out of their holes, they're immediately outnumbered, sometimes 10-1 by pro-immigrant forces. And that was the reason why early on many commentators on the left regarded the Minutemen as just a joke, a handful of clowns with 30-30s in the desert in Arizona. But then we saw, anti-immigrant, politics sweep like wildfire through the grassroots of the Republican Party, sideswipe the Bush administration, topple over Karl Rove's plan of trying to enlarge the Republican electorate amongst Latinos, and it's grown at a rate, and with a kind of ferocity that reminds you of the early Cold War of anti-communism in the 1950s. So the fact that the Minutemen may just be a handful, their attempts to patrol the border are pathetic, unfortunately, is a false gauge of how deeply the politics of resentment have spread and into the ranks of the Democratic Party, too. I mean, many of the Democrats who are going to be elected next week in formerly Republican seats are Republicans in all but name.
Do you have any concerns that this politics of resentment might explode into forms of violence on the border that we have not yet seen?
Well, I think the whole frontera is explosive. Ordinary people, are being trapped with, almost, with very few economic alternatives, losing their jobs in the construction and service industries on this side of the border, faced with unprecedented violence on the other side of the border that's destroyed the tourist industry. Now the maquiladoras are beginning to close down. And, it's an absolute mystery how people will deal with the crisis of daily life, particularly when you add to that, the expectation that there'll be, increasing attacks and, political blame games with immigrants, much wider involvement of local police in enforcing immigration laws. It's a volatile and explosive situation, and it won't be diffused until Democrats are forced to take positions on this, particularly the Latino Democrats, in Sacramento, many of whom have just avoided the issue, of immigrant rights, or the fact that probably 40% of the industrial working class in LA is undocumented until they're willing to fight. People put the pressure on them to make them fight. The right wing will dominate this issue.
Mike Davis joins us by phone from San Diego. He's written a number of interesting pieces that appear on the web. One is Can Obama See the Grand Canyon on Presidential Blindness and Economic Catastrophe. Another that we're talking about now is People Burn Here, that originally appeared in The Nation magazine. And Living on the Ice Shelf, Humanity's Meltdown, that also appeared on Tom Dispatch. We have links to a couple of those pieces on againstthegrain.org, and I want to ask Mike in a moment about his sense of climate change, where it's heading, and whether the political response is or will be adequate. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say in response to this, Mike, but there has been no large-scale follow-up to the historic pro-immigrant marches of May 2006. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's in large part because people are terrorized, and they don't have any effective, political allies. I can speak from, intimate experiences of people I know who are afraid to take public transit these days in San Diego for the risk of being, pulled over. I mean, the chief thing that the Minutemen type groups have accomplished, really their chief, short-term strategic objective is not to build the border wall, but it was to turn, you know, 1.5 million local cops in America into Border Patrol agents. And, of course, that's now beginning to happen on a large scale. Here in San Diego County, the suburban city of Escondido, the police now regularly set up roadblocks to ask people about their immigration status, and then, you know, arrest them and you know, deport them. So I think in part it's a combination of just terrorization of the daily life, particularly of undocumented immigrants, and a kind of deep frustration that despite these immense demonstrations of the social power of you know, of immigrants in these historic marches, they have few real effective allies, few politicians with you know, the guts to defend the people that do so much of the backbreaking work of the society.